Hey everyone, welcome to Hope for Survival YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. This video is part of the Truth Seeker series, and today we're doing an interview conversation with someone I highly respect, love him like a brother, and my pastor, youngster, Kermit Mcpeek at the Crossing Church in Kodak, Tennessee. And I wanted to talk to the pastor in this video regarding communicating with our youth. And I think that if all of us stop and think about it, we've all had complaints about things that we hear and things that we see. We've all had conversations about being disgruntled with when we're out in public, and maybe seeing how some of our teens are dressed, or their different colors of hair and things of that nature. And the reason I picked Pastor Kermit for this, he probably doesn't realize it, but probably about 5 to 7 years ago, he and I had a private conversation that I remember very well. And we were talking about the youth of today. And the pastor told me, this was down at the gymnasium in Dandridge. The pastor told me, all they want is for you to listen to them. And that has stuck with me ever since then. So Pastor Kermit, thank you for doing this video as part of the Truth Seeker series. And first I'll ask you I'll ask you again. When we had that conversation, I was telling you about how what I was hearing and seeing from our teens, how it made me feel, and your response back, which I've shared. Why did you answer that the way that you did, if you remember?
Part of it, no doubt, was because I have teenagers in my home still.
Yep.
We have 4 daughters, so on a daily basis, throughout the day and the evening, we interact with those 4 girls, but also having a growing church and a young church that was a plant, that's 20 years old now. We've dealt with youth and dealt with people coming in who are interested because they might think that it's something new, or they might think it's something fresh, and people are ready for change. But the answer was as honest as I could be, in the sense of, sometimes we think because we're older that we have everything that they need to know, and that's partially correct. But part of what they need is to be heard, because they know some things too, and they're experiencing the world in a way that we can't, simply because they're younger and we've got a few years on them. So the way we experience the world and the way we process the world is different for them. So the things that catch our attention might not catch theirs, and vice versa. The things that catches their attention we may never notice. And biblically speaking, pastorally speaking, the Bible teaches us that we're all members of one body, that our age doesn't separate that. It does talk about us mentoring the younger. It does talk about the younger being there and being a functioning part. And even though it might not say it exactly that way, the proof is in the stories. At 12 years old, Jesus was teaching in the temple. David, as a young man, was called to be a king. And all those examples, the Timothy's in the New Testament. So it's there, and to kind of put our heads in the sand and pretend that they're not part of society, and a very important part of society, who will actually be in our shoes quicker than we think, is kind of silly. So I'll say this, a lot of my ministry over the last 10 years has changed from a mission trip that I took in 2016. We went to Haiti, and they asked me to come and do a pastor's conference in Haiti, and I was very honored to go speak to pastors in Haiti in churches that they were forming and birthing and bringing life to. And when we got there, I was prepared to share things I thought that they would need to know, and I was full of information, and I had messages planned. But when we got there, they were hungry. And when I say hungry, I mean physically hungry. And until we could satisfy that need, even though we had the answer, they weren't ready to receive it. And I know that many people have that same story when they go to a third world country, or they go somewhere that's probably not a new message. But what I have found is that it spreads across, not just to people who might not be as fortunate as we are. That spreads across to everyone. Until you can identify the thing that they need most, they're not really interested in our answer, and they're not really interested in our message. So that answer was, back to you 4 or 5 years after I'd been on that mission trip, and was learning to spread that across all ministry, whether I was out of the country or in the country. And in order to find out what somebody needs the most, you have to listen.
Yeah, listening is key. I admit this, and I probably maybe wouldn't have admitted it prior to our conversation several years ago. And it really opened my mind. Like you said, as we age, we like to think that we're wiser, but sometimes it's in a selfish way. And I have often, since our conversation, thought back to when I was that age. And I've heard you tell stories about when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of off the rails, and long hair, selfish, lived every day for today, and since our conversation, I've often thought back to, man, now I know when my dad used to just, when I would say something or do something, he would just look at me and smile and shake his head. He was having the same thoughts then that I would find myself having today.
And let me say this too, Butch. I respect you very much.
Thank you.
And you're a dear brother of mine. And I appreciate the honesty. And I think all of us would have to be honest. And even though I had that experience and it affected my ministry the way that it did, I thank God for that revelation that we need to listen to them, but we need to listen to everyone. But I too still battle that, when I'm out in society and I see things that I think are silly or a waste of time, and that's
Mm-hmm.
part of having a flesh.
Yeah.
So I don't want it at all to be considered to be some sort of expert or scholar on
Yep.
this particular subject, but I've watched God have success in humility, and I've watched God have success, and again, a biblical principle is that if we humble ourselves, He will lift us up. And if we're humble enough, even before somebody who's younger than us, or someone who we know might not have the life experience that we might have, it gives an opportunity for God to come in. And it's not so much about what we do at that point, then it's about what He does. And anytime we can get ourselves out of the way and allow God to come into a situation, the more success we're going to see.
Yeah, and I, we individually look back over our life path and what was around us through these times of lesson learning, growth, and so forth. And I was I made a decision at 22-ish that went against everything that people had viewed me of paths I would go on. And when I joined the military, I mean, anyone who would have ever bet, they would have bet there was no way.
Mm-hmm.
But I was led down that path, and for 20 years, I was blessed to have supervisors around me who had the right vision, they had the right tools to mentor me in a direction to where I am today. I say this because that was my path. But for me to assume when I'm looking at youth, well, why? Where's their morals, or where's their guidance on choices? They're all different.
Yeah.
Their surroundings are different, right? So many come from single parent homes or broken homes, or they come from homes of addiction and so forth. And these kids are just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Right. And it's finding them.
Yeah.
Or hoping that you can cross paths and leave an impression on them versus why on earth is your hair orange? Or, because oftentimes children or teens that make these choices, it's a symbol to them, right? It's a reminder to them of pain that's maybe in their hearts or in their lives, right? And that's where we need to be, I think, compassionate, because it's like so many of them, it's like, do they not know to respect their elders? Well, that's an assumption, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's hard for them.
It is, and all the reasons you were describing, I think we discuss it whenever we come to this topic. We talk about the world's different now. We talk about the changes that there are. And one of the things I feel like we leave out, and it has a whole lot to do with why they don't necessarily communicate the way that we could. Technology is a part of it. But one of the things I feel like that we're leaving out is just the sheer increase in population. In the world, yes, but particularly in our country. The increase in population, even from when I was what would be considered a youth, then look back to when you would be considered youth age, it's so crowded.
Yeah.
They're
trying to fit.
They are, and that need to stand out is amplified.
We recently lost a good brother in Charlie Kirk, and probably more so since I had heard of him, I had listened to his message and so forth. Sometimes time in our days doesn't allow us to really dive in, and so more so in the last 2 weeks, his effort to get out on campuses after they have finished public school systems in most cases, and they're now in a university system, and he's trying to open their eyes to look at the facts and introduce many of them to Christ and so on and so forth. So we're not just as truth seekers and truth speakers, we're not just up against dysfunctional homes where the father of the home is not there, and the father from above in many cases is unheard of. So he was catching them and trying to introduce.
Absolutely.
And we need more of that.
I'll have to admit also, I know who he was, but I didn't really understand his ministry. I didn't understand his organization. I had heard some short clips, and I had heard him speak a couple of times. But you're right, in the last few weeks, I think that it's become clear, especially when you realize how the evil manifests itself and rose up against it. But one thing, I was listening to him the other day and watching some of that memorial last night and some again today. One thing that again, he was going to these places and he was allowing them to speak, and he was having a conversation. It wasn't that he was going on to campuses and doing a revival or a crusade. He was going and having a conversation. The beauty in that and the genius in that is that college age students, that is the greatest need that they have. They are scholarly minded. They want to know the answers.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to ask the questions that they want to ask versus someone coming in and telling them what they think they need to hear. So, I mean, again, that principle spreads across not just youth. I mean, that's what we're happen to be talking about today. And maybe their voice is easier to overlook than someone who's older or someone who can communicate better than they can. And again, that's an issue too. They've never been taught how to communicate because of the technology that they have and the way that they get through their days. Even their education is so much different. I mean, we've planted a school here at the church. This is the first year of its operation. And, you know, some of the feedback that we've heard from the parents is they can see a big difference just in the first month, because at their other school, they were sitting with technology in front of them all day. And here, it's smaller class size, and they're actually getting interaction with a teacher in an uncrowded place. Some of the same issues that we see in society, it goes all the way down to how they're educated and how they're taught. So, yeah, it's concerning, but I really salute what Charlie was about. Now from this side, I can see it better than I could then.
Yeah, his Christ-centered focus in all, but what he was able to accomplish at the age up to the age of 31, and still maintain his faith and focus. He was going onto the battlefield undeterred, with the armor of Christ, to go and confront, give a mouthpiece to those who oppose, and listen to them, and in his best have answers.
Yeah.
And we need so many more who are willing to get outside their comfort zone. You know, you may have heard this growing up. I know I did. But you need to respect your elders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as nice as that sounds, respect is earned. And I heard numerous interviews since Charlie's passing of those who went to hear him speak that maybe went there with an opposing view, but how he stayed with them even after he left that event. He stayed with them, messaging and communicating with them, and how many of them credited him with, some cases, saving their lives, changing their position on decisions they were about to make that would have been
Sure.
life altering. And the respect was gained. He worked to earn their respect. And I think sometimes, I know I'm guilty of it, just being a grandfather. You know, when the kids were younger, you know, I don't do noise well at all. But something I had to learn was these things that you're expecting from the youth, they're not given, they're not automatic.
Mm.
You can't have them running at one speed and then when they come around you or to your house automatically change. You know, the kids are kids, right? And it was a long process for me as for me to understand the whole makeup part of it, you know. And I was one of them once.
Yeah.
I was one of them.
I think one of the things, you know, we're pointing out difficulties. We're talking about they don't have communication skills. We're talking about those things, and that's true. But I think it's important that we interject here, because they don't know how to communicate. That doesn't mean they don't have a voice.
Yep.
And we know that to be true because God made us. And as an educator, that's my heart, and I think that's what once I learned Charlie's mission, that's what I respected, is he was an educator too, and the root word of educator is educe, and it's not, educe means to pull something out of. It's the opposite of what education has turned into, which is, and also mentorship, where we feel like we need to push things into them. Mm-hmm. If we pay attention first and pull out of them their skills, their gifts, what makes them unique, and we are all unique. We're one of one. Nobody else has ever had our DNA, nor will they.
We're an original.
That's pointing that out to them and letting them know that it's okay, to learn how to use that voice that's on the inside of them. It's really important. Now, you can shape that voice, and it needs shaped. Mm-hmm. But I think the mistake sometimes that we make is we just shut them down and say they don't have a voice. And that's,
you need to listen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Listen, not be heard.
Yeah.
I think's how it was put. I heard that often.
Yep.
I was listening to another Christian brother who was an acquaintance of the wife of mine. We went to church with him in West Virginia years ago. He's a Christian war correspondent now. And he was recently talking about Haiti. He travels all over the world. And he was talking about Haiti. Then he got onto the topic of youth, and he was given some statistics that were kind of mind-blowing in a way. But he was talking about how he said that 63% of our youth in America, 63% under the age of 18, they've been exposed to pornography. Mm-hmm. And half of that 63%, they have been violated in one sense or another in the pornographic arena in America. Which, again, when we as adults see that youth, all we see is what our eyes present to us, but we don't know where that being has been, right? We don't give consideration to, like we were talking about, the orange hair or blue hair, and oftentimes that's a symbol for that person. It's a reminder to them that I'm not going down that path again, or pain, or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And so much of our society today is dependent upon technology, especially in the home. It's a babysitter to a degree. And many of those parents are not tech savvy. How do they know that those youth, their child or their children, how do they know what that button has exposed them to that dark world? And again, this is why I think a Christ-centered home with the best remnants of what is a semblance of family is so important. Dinner at the dinner table. How do you know your child and what your child's thinking, or what they're going through, or pain they may have, if you're not spending time with them? And life today is so fast, especially in a single parent home. And so many today now, grandparents are raising their grandchildren. Oh, he or she's in their room and they're on their iPad. What are they doing?
Nobody knows.
And weaning them off of it.
Mm-hmm. It's almost an impossibility to wean them off of it because of AI, because of the way that many of our jobs are, the way that education is. So I don't have an answer for that at all.
And many school systems today are using technology,
so. Well, and again, speaking to the crowdedness, you know, when you have a room of 30, 35 students,
Oh yeah.
sometimes the only way that you're going to reach them is through technology, and the facilitator using technology also. So again, that's posing an issue, you know, just the sheer population.
Probably 15 years ago, when we were living in Huntsville full time, we had a guest speaker at the church we attended there, and he was the head of a seminary, I think, in New Orleans, and he was talking about technology 15 years ago, but he said, you know, sometimes we as adults are slow to learn the technology, and not so much how to use it, but the power of it. He said, we mailed out payments for the semester and put the letters in all their mailboxes on campus. And he said, we hit 30, 60, 90 days past due, and we couldn't figure out why.
They've been in the mailbox.
They hadn't been to the mailbox. And the response was, you should have texted.
Or emailed.
Yeah. So it's like you said earlier, we as adults don't have all the answers, even sometimes when we're expected to have the answers because they look to us. Mm-hmm. But there is a level of learning on our part that we have to learn and understand in order to maybe have those answers. To communicate and relate to our youth, you know, because whether we want to admit it or not, they're our future, and how the time we invest and how we learn from them and try to mentor and mold into productive roles in society in some form or fashion. And it doesn't have to be politics, you know. It's like you said, well, where are their skills at, and trying to lead them into a direction to where they can grow in those skills to provide and take care of their own, and it's the phrase productive member of society, if you will. And I think in some regards, we as older adults have maybe failed in that area, you know. Again, it's don't speak, listen, and we'll tell you what you need to do. And you know, that's when the dunce bomb hits you in the head, and it's like, you just cut off their listening.
Well, what you did to them in their mind is you defined what respect means to you.
Yeah.
So
respect me, but I'm not showing you respect.
Well, it causes them to shut down.
Yeah.
And some of them are shut down because they think that's what you want. Now, some of them are not. You know, some of them, like you said, have been abused, or some of them, you know, might be troubled. But there's so many different reasons why kids don't talk now, and I think we've discussed several of them. And the biggest thing is, I think that we as a society, if we could just realize the importance, it's not really optional to leave them without a voice. Even if they don't know how to communicate, then we need to teach them how to communicate. If they have been abused, then we need to, you know, get involved in that. If they have other issues, those are things too. And this is something too, again, across the population. It's something I say to our other pastors who serve here at the church. Even though we have specialties, and we have a youth pastor, and we have a recovery pastor, and we have a young adult pastor, and we have a youth pastor, even though we have those titles in the front of our names, it's all pastoring, and it's all ministry. It doesn't really matter how old you are. It's all ministry. So these issues, even though we're speaking particularly about youth, as a pastor, I want you to know that they end up spreading across all ages too. And I guess I'd be considered middle-aged at this point.
You're a puppy.
I'm kind of in the middle, and I can see both sides. And oddly enough, a lot of the issue that we're discussing here with the youth, I hear some of the same things from the seniors. You know, they don't feel like their voice is heard anymore.
Yeah.
So communication is an issue across the board.
For me individually, I often have to stomp my foot because I find that there's areas with this understanding thing of the youth that still chat my behind, if you will.
Sure.
We went to a Tennessee game Saturday, first one we've been to, and it was great. We enjoyed it. We bought our tickets through VetTix for veterans, and we sat in the student section. You know, and the wife warned me before we went. She said, "No, you know, we're going to be in the student section by the band, right?" And it was all great. There were up where we were at. There were probably more adults than young ones. But prior to going into the stadium, we were over across the street where the vendors and the Vol, where they sold the Vol hats and stuff like that. But in front of us, we were in a hurry, but in front of us, there was 3 young college-age females, right? And one of them was buying a Tennessee hat. So she asked to look at 3 of them. She put all 3 hats on individually and took her picture, right? She had them on her head, sweaty. And then she was showing the picture to her 2 friends to say, which hat's me? And I'm thinking, you know, and I could feel my backside starting to burn. Like, first off, why are you putting these hats on your head when someone's going to end up buying the 2 that you don't pick, you know? And can't you see how long this line is back here that people want to buy stuff? But I made it through it. It was another one of those learning lessons for me.
Yeah. One would think, discussing what we've already talked about with the population increase and the overcrowding, that we would notice that there's other people in the world, but
how you get by that?
You have to teach them. Yeah, you know, you have to teach them.
I wanted to, not in front of other people.
Yeah.
But they were gone. We got our things and we went in, and all was well, you know. But you know, like I've admitted up front, this as important as I know this topic is, because they are our future. And to be the future, we have to work with them to learn, communicate, hear them, and so forth, to get them from here to hopefully get them to here with success, individually, for the betterment of them as individuals, family, community, and country. And hopefully in this process, whoever it is that's exposed to them will take the time to also share the gospel, be ready for negative and naysayers, right? Which we're going to do another video on this topic, but I know that I'm not the only one out there. I'm 64, and I know that I'm not the only one, because I have chats with male friends in the same age, right?
Yeah.
That we all have these struggles, you know, and we have to pray about it, but we also have got to learn to change. right? It doesn't have to be a battle. It shouldn't be a battle, right? And work through it, because no matter how they look, how they dress, and where they come from, they are like us, and they're originals, right? And so for someone out there who may not admit what I admitted, or they're going to look around when they do, what would you say to them?
Someone who wouldn't admit that they
They
might
need
be
to-
dismissive instead of
Yeah.
actually trying to help the
Yeah.
situation. I guess move past that truth, because I learned early in my life what is, and it is a difficult situation. And a lot of the quote unquote judgments or the idealistic things that are in our heads, and I too, like I say, I admit it too. When I see things, I have to take a breath and process for a minute. But I think that it's something where we have to realize, okay, this is here. Even though we wish it weren't, even though we say it shouldn't, it's still here. Mm-hmm. And to realize that we're part of the solution. You don't get to just stick your head in the sand and wish it away. And you don't get to go back to the good old days as we form them in our heads. You have to constantly process through, reaffirm yourself, and realize there really are no good old days. That's a falseness that I believe. There really are all those things that I'm holding on to. There's really no old-fashioned kind of stuff, because as you said, you processed through it actually whenever you said, I remember when I was a youth and I had the long hair and I had the, and for lack of a better term, old timers in those days. Mm-hmm. I promise you, we're looking at you wondering why in the world you had long hair.
Oh yeah, selfish.
This is not a new problem. That's the enemy twisting it in our head,
yeah.
Trying to tell us that it's a new problem. It's not. It's just a problem. And some generations might have handled it better than other generations, but all we can do is the best we can do with what we have, and we do know we have the answer.
Yeah.
But again, to just reshape it and reform it again, no matter who you're talking to, what situation there is, they have needs that they bring to the meeting. And if you can meet those needs, and they know you can meet those needs, and you don't, they just shut down. So if there's a need that these youth might have, and I think that we can probably agree from this talk that the biggest thing is that they have a voice and they may or may not know how to use it, but the problem is they're not using it.
Yeah.
And they're shutting down and they're not developing. So I think that understanding the problem is the first thing, and then coming to a meeting and coming to those who we would consider youth to be, going into the meeting and knowing I'm going to have to meet their need before I can present the answer I know they need. Yeah. I think that we've talked a lot of the issues about why we don't make it that simple, but talking to our youth pastor here at the church and seeing youth movements that are happening. I told you this morning, I spoke to a group of men Friday night.
Yep.
There was over 100 men there. Probably 30 or 35 of them responded at the end of the message, and all of those were quote unquote youth. So it's not that they don't want the message we have. It's not that they can't admit that they have a need. I just feel like that we have to be careful and earn the right to give them the answer.
One of the fears, concerns, when I was young, when you were young, and when we would do silly, stupid things, in many cases they were forgivable, and they were not at the degree that law enforcement and the judicial system was involved. And today you see so many young folks who are making choices, or they're being led, being involved with people who are making choices that will follow the results of these choices. They're going to follow them for the rest of their life. It's going to be on when they go for job interviews. It's going to stay with them and trying to get to them early enough, especially if they haven't heard it in their homes, is, you don't want to be so blunt, but choices have consequences that will hurt you, in 5 or 10 years when you go to get a good job and they say, you're qualified, however, this is on your record and we can't hire you, and now you're married and you've got a kid or 2 kids, the understanding part of it, I guess, but we just keep the hope and keep trying. Right.
I think the biggest thing is to be careful, because you talk about a topic like this and you can hear even as we're trying to reach out and consider other people to talk about this, there's a lot of words that are being said here. What happens when we say a lot of words is because we don't really know the answer, but we know that we need to change the behavior. And one thing I would caution anyone who's listening to this, don't take this and put the weight of the world on your shoulders and think that we got to save the youth. That's God's business. What we got to do is humble ourselves to the point to where we can get them to God. That's ultimately all that we're doing. And one thing when you were talking there, and I was thinking about all the different looks and styles and personalities that there are, many times early on into communication, you might find out, I can see what this kid needs, but I don't have the time to teach them how to communicate, because some of them you'll realize they don't know how to communicate. Well, that's going to take time, and maybe you don't have time to teach them how to communicate, and then once they know how to communicate, then they can tell you how they're looking at things. So then you might need to refer them to a youth pastor. You might need to get them in contact with somebody, and that's really important, is that our job in life is not so much that we become gods, it's that we become connectors, and that we connect people with the right people. That way they can get to God, because ultimately that is the answer.
Yeah, I tell folks that often, that if you have found a youth that falls into any of these categories, oftentimes it is finding the person that they need to be connected to.
Yes, sir.
That not just youth, just people in general, well, he or she doesn't really like me or care for me. Well, you have a common friend. Maybe you need to go through that friend and have that friend talk with and work with this person to achieve the objective that you're looking for. So, well, I think we've covered about A to Z, and we've solved everything but what cornflakes are made of. But
I hope it helps somebody, and I hope that we realize, that as we encounter everyone, that even though our flesh might want us to, that even the youth, we can't discount them as part of the population, because you said they're our future, but in a lot of ways they're our now.
Yeah, they are.
So it's something that we need to realize. It's an issue. It might not be natural to us. It might be something that we think is someone else's job, but ultimately all of us have something to offer, and you might just haven't found the right kid yet.
I think you just nailed it. That it's someone else's problem to deal with. Mm-hmm. Someone else will handle it. And I think to some degree that's shunning responsibility, because that person might be a youth in your family, right? I have a friend in North Carolina who is a grandmother with a lot of health problems, but she even with her own health issues, she spends at least one day a week. All of her grandchildren that are of age are homeschooled, but she takes care of one of the granddaughters, I believe. And just that, not just homeschooling them, but that exposure and the hours together. She's a quality woman, Christ-centered, devout, faithful lady. that makes the effort, and I think that's the key, is making the effort.
Yep.
You know, brother, this has been good. I think you helped me as much as maybe you help somebody else. It's always a pleasure and honor to spend time having these one-on-one chats together.
You might not believe it, but it's really therapeutic for us. I think people who are kind of on the battlefield of the ministry, to be able to just talk about topics like this and maybe make you realize. I mean, we do a lot, and it's unseen. People, you know, it's hard to imagine what all we really do throughout the week.
Yeah.
You know, so to just be able to talk about it really helps me too. So thank you too.
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you will continue checking out the Truth Seeker series. And we're simply trying to lay the groundwork for everyone who may have hesitation in one area or another, to give you some thoughts and encouragement to get involved. That's the big thing we're looking for, is to get involved. Majority of folks who watch Hope for Survival YouTube are professed Christians, and we got work to do. We always have work to do, and sometimes we get lackadaisical, hesitant, lazy, but we need to tighten up our spenders and get back at it. So, all right, till next one. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget, you live in the greatest country on earth, and always remember to count your blessings, and don't forget to give thanks. Bravo, Echo out. Thank you for checking out the Hope for Survival YouTube channel. If you are new to Hope for Survival, you can check out our books at our webpage. Book 1, which is Hope for Survival, Getting You Prepared for Disasters, and Book 2, Hope for Survival, The Mindset, are both available for order on the website. We also offer the Hope for Survival football stick, which is a memory stick set up as a digital filing cabinet with files already loaded on there for you to digitally copy items such as deeds, auto transcript for ownership, wills, living wills, loans, banking information, items that if your home burned down or you had some form of a disaster, you could have all of your important papers already digitally filed on this stick. All you do is simply drag the digital file into the appropriate preset folder, so that you'll have it in the event of a disaster, you have to flee your home in a hurry, or also if you're away from home and you need critical information that's personal. If you have your memory stick with you, you can put it in your computer and pull that information up wherever you may be. Again, you can find these items to order at our website, https www.hopeforsurvival.com, or you can email me at preparedness101@protonmail.com, and I will try to help you out. Again, thanks for checking out the Hope for Survival YouTube channel. Hope to see you again.